"Cowboy, do you fear me or desire me?" she asked, alone in the desert night. The desert always grew quiet at sunset, but that evening the silence felt deeper, almost heavy, as if the whole world had paused to listen. Cole hardly noticed it the moment the sky began turning shades of orange and dusty purple. He had spent the whole day working with a small team rounding up horses, helping a neighbor who needed an extra hand. It was the sort of work he knew well, calm, steady, and comforting in its routine, but it was also exhausting. His shirt was covered in sweat and desert dust, and his arms felt like they had been carrying the day's heat inside them. When he finally climbed into his old truck to head home, he told himself he'd be there before dark. But the desert didn't care about plans. 5 miles down the quiet road that cut through empty land, his engine gave a strange knocking sound. Cole frowned, leaned forward, and listened. He hoped it was nothing serious. But then there was a loud sputter, and the truck rolled to a slow, stubborn stop. Cole tried to restart the engine twice, but the old thing refused. "Well, now, that's just perfect," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. He stepped out into the warm desert air, which was still holding onto the last heat of the day. The road stretched in both directions with no sign of another vehicle. The sky was dimming quickly, and he knew there wouldn't be much light left. Cole opened the hood and stared at the engine, though he already had a feeling what the problem was. He wasn't afraid. He had been stuck in worse places before, but he couldn't deny he felt frustrated. He wanted to get home, shower, eat something warm, and fall into bed. Instead, he was watching the daylight slip away while trying to figure out if the engine belt was loose or if the heat had caused something else to snap. He worked in silence for several minutes, checking clamps and connections, wiping sweat from his forehead. The desert breeze brushed past him now and then, carrying the faint smell of dry sage and warm earth. It was a peaceful place, but peacefulness could feel lonely when you were stranded. He had just reached for his flashlight when he noticed movement in the distance. At first, he thought it was a trick of the fading light, maybe a shadow, maybe a sway of heat still rising from the ground. But as he squinted, he realized it was a figure, someone walking, a woman from the shape of her silhouette. Alone, no backpack, no flashlight. Just walking as if the desert were a normal place to take an evening stroll. Cole straightened slowly, uncertain what to think. It wasn't common to see someone alone out here, especially with night falling. As she came closer, he could make out more details. She was a little dusty, as if she had been walking for a long time. Her hair was loose and stirred softly in the breeze. Her clothes were simple and practical: jeans, a light jacket, worn boots. Nothing strange, yet nothing explained why she was here. Cole wiped his hands on his jeans and stepped slightly away from the truck so she could see him clearly. He didn't want to startle her. When she was about 10 yards away, she raised her hand in a small, polite greeting. "Evening," she called, her voice steady but gentle. "Evening," Cole replied. "You all right out here?" She nodded like it was a perfectly normal question. "Yes, I'm fine. I'm sorry if I startled you. I've been walking for a while, didn't expect to see anyone out here." "Same thought crossed my mind," Cole said honestly. The woman stopped a few steps away, not too close, not too far. Close enough to talk, far enough to keep space between them. She looked calm, confident, but there was something thoughtful in her eyes, something that didn't match the stillness of her voice. "I'm Cole," he said, giving her a small nod. "My truck's acting stubborn," she smiled lightly. "Machines and desert heat don't always get along. I'm Mara." "Mara," he repeated. "You lost, need water, phone signal's bad out here." "I have water," she said. "And yes, I guess I am lost. Not dangerously, but enough that I wasn't sure which way to go before dark." Cole looked at the sky. Dark was coming fast, the horizon nearly swallowed by night. He knew this desert well. It was beautiful, but walking in it without light was not ideal. "Well, you're welcome to stay by my fire while I get this engine figured out. It'll get cold soon." He gestured toward the small metal fire pit he kept in his truck bed for nights on the road. He had already pulled it out and set it on the ground earlier, planning to wait out the night if needed. She glanced at the truck, then at him, measuring his offer. After a moment, she nodded. "Thank you, I'd appreciate that." Cole grabbed a few pieces of wood from the back of the truck and started the fire. The warm glow spread over the sand, lighting the small circle around them. Myra sat on a smooth rock nearby, wrapping her arms lightly around her knees. She didn't look afraid. She didn't look nervous, she just looked thoughtful. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled softly, small sparks drifting upward like tiny stars trying to rejoin the sky. Cole finally broke the silence. You said you've been walking for a while. You come from one of the towns out west, she shook her head. No, I was staying at a small lodge by the ridge. I went out for a long walk earlier this afternoon. Time got away from me. Her eyes shifted toward the horizon. It's peaceful out here, easy to lose track of hours. Peaceful, Cole repeated. Yeah, I know that feeling. She looked at him again, this time studying him more closely. What about you? Long day, he chuckled softly. Long day, long week, long year, take your pick. Her smile reached her eyes just a little. That sounds familiar. Cole leaned back on his hands, watching the flames. I was helping a neighbor with a wild horse roundup. I do ranch work mostly, and a bit of everything else when folks need extra help. Mara tilted her head. So you're a cowboy. Cole laughed lightly, shaking his head. People call me that sometimes. Suppose it's accurate enough. Just a man who works outdoors and prefers open land over crowds. That sounds peaceful too, she said. It is, he said quietly, though he didn't sound completely certain. Mara's gaze drifted toward the fire again, and her voice softened. Sometimes peaceful places are exactly where we go when we're trying to think. Cole didn't ask what she meant. He could hear something deeper in her tone, something personal, something she wasn't sure she wanted to explain. Instead, he let the crackling fire fill the space between them. It seemed to ease her. After a few minutes, she spoke again. Do you come out here often? Often enough, he said. Desert's quiet, helps clear the mind. Clear the mind, she repeated quietly, as if the words were familiar to her too. Cole didn't want to pry, but there was something unusual about her presence. She didn't seem scared or confused the way most people would be after getting lost. She carried herself like someone who wasn't running from danger, just running from thoughts she didn't want following her. You live around here? She asked him. Not too far. Half-hour drive when the truck behaves. Cole poked at the fire with a stick. Got a small place, nothing fancy. Fancy is overrated, Mara said softly. He smiled at that. More silence passed, but nothing about it felt awkward. It was the kind of silence that came naturally when two strangers found themselves in the same quiet corner of the world. After a while, Mara stretched her legs and shifted slightly so she could look at him more clearly. Her eyes reflected the firelight, giving them a warm, almost glowing softness. Thank you for letting me sit here, she said. You didn't have to. Desert nights aren't meant to be faced alone, Cole replied simply, and you looked like you could use a rest. She smiled at him again, but this time it was slower, more grateful. You read people well, Cole shrugged lightly. Comes from spending a lot of time working with animals. They don't talk, but you can tell what they need if you pay attention. And what about people? Mara asked. Do you pay attention to them too? Depends on the person, he said honestly. Some folks don't want to be understood. And some do, she said quietly. Cole met her eyes. She didn't look away. Something in that moment felt like an unspoken conversation, two people recognizing something familiar in each other's quietness. He cleared his throat softly and stood. Let me check the engine again. Might as well try while there's a little light from the fire. She nodded and watched him as he worked. He could feel her gaze, but it didn't make him uncomfortable. It made him oddly aware of how calm the night had become. The sky was now a deep blue-black, dotted with stars that shone like silver dust. Cole worked on the engine, tightening a clamp and testing a wire. After a few minutes, he sighed and stepped back. Well, looks like she's staying still for the night, he said. Mara didn't seem worried. Then the fire is a good idea. Cole returned to his place by the flames. Mara shifted slightly to sit closer, not close enough to touch, but close enough that the fire warmed them both evenly. The desert wind picked up a little, brushing against their shoulders like a gentle reminder of the wide, open land around them. Cole glanced at Mara again. Her face was calm, but her eyes looked like someone who had been carrying something heavy for a long time. You all right? He asked softly. She took a slow breath. Yes, I think I am, maybe more than before. Cole nodded. Good. Neither of them said anything else for a while. They just sat there, watching the fire, listening to the soft wind, sharing the quiet desert night. And though they were strangers, the silence between them felt comforting, as if the desert had brought them together for a reason neither of them understood yet. But the night was long, and the desert had a way of revealing things slowly. And the story between Cole and Mara had only just begun. The fire burned gently, giving off soft warmth as the night grew cooler. Cole added another piece of wood, watching the sparks lift into the air before fading into the dark. The stars above were brighter now, unblocked by clouds or city lights. Out here, the sky felt almost endless, like a giant blanket made of silver dots. The desert always felt big, but at night it felt even bigger. Mara sat near the fire with her knees pulled close, letting the glow warm her hands. She seemed a bit more relaxed than before, though there was still a hint of something uncertain in her expression, as if she was trying to decide whether she should keep her thoughts inside or let them out. Cole noticed it without staring. He wasn't one to push anyone to talk, but he also knew when someone needed a small, quiet space to open up at their own pace. "You hungry?" he asked gently, reaching into the small cooler he kept in his truck. It still held a few things, some bread, a couple of apples, and a wrapped sandwich he had saved earlier. Mara hesitated, then nodded slowly. "A little," she admitted. "I didn't bring much with me." Cole offered her the sandwich and an apple. "Go ahead, I've had enough today." She accepted them with a polite smile. "Thank you." Cole nodded and took a bite of his own apple, leaning back as he watched the fire. The night air was cool on his face, and he breathed in the familiar desert scent, sagebrush, dust, and a hint of dry grass. For him, it was comforting. He wondered what the desert felt like to her. Mara ate quietly for a while, as if gathering strength from each bite. When she finished, she set the wrapper aside and looked into the flames. The way the light flickered across her face made her look thoughtful, like she was carrying stories she wasn't sure how to tell. "You said you were walking to clear your mind," Cole said softly. "I get that. Sometimes it helps being out here where it's quiet." She nodded. "It does more than I expected." Cole didn't speak again, he simply waited. If she wanted to say more, she would. If not, he wouldn't push. After a long moment, she sighed lightly. "It's been a hard few months," she began, her voice low but steady. "I kept trying to handle everything on my own. I thought if I kept moving, kept busy, kept pretending I was fine, maybe I would be." Cole kept his eyes on the fire, letting her speak without feeling watched. "But I guess the pressure just piled up," she continued. "One day it all felt too heavy, so I left everything for a while. I booked a room at the lodge near the ridge and told myself I would figure things out in a few days. I didn't expect the desert to feel so different from what I knew. It's quiet in a way that makes you listen to yourself." Cole understood that well. "Quiet can be loud sometimes." Mara gave a soft, almost surprised laugh. "Yes, that's exactly it." She wrapped her arms around herself lightly, not from cold, but from the kind of comfort we give ourselves when we talk about things close to the heart. "I'm not running from anything dangerous," she said. "Just from who I used to be, or who I let myself become. It's like I lost the part of myself that trusted my own choices." Cole felt a small pull in his chest. He didn't know her story, not fully, but he knew the feeling of losing confidence, losing direction, losing trust in your own judgment. "That's a hard thing," he said quietly. "Takes time to get that back." She nodded. "I know, I guess I just needed space. The kind of space where no one knew me, no expectations, no questions." Cole took another slow breath, letting it mix with the night air. Space can help, and the desert gives plenty of it. Mara lifted her eyes to him. "You come out here for that, too?" Cole hesitated, not because he didn't want to answer, but because he wasn't used to explaining his feelings to anyone. Still, something about her open honesty made him feel he should give something in return. "Sometimes," he said finally, "life has its moments, some heavier than others." She waited, giving him the same patience he had given her. "I didn't handle things well for a while," he admitted. "There was a time when I pushed people away, thinking I was doing them a favor. I figured being alone meant no one would have to deal with my troubles." "Did it help?" she asked gently. Cole thought about that. "Not the way I expected. Being alone can be peaceful, but it can also be lonely in a way you don't notice until you've been there too long." Mara nodded slowly. "Lonely can sneak up on you." She stared into the fire again, drawn into the swirling orange light. The flames made her eyes shine, soft and reflective. For a while they both sat quietly again, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It felt like a shared moment, a moment where two people who barely knew each other somehow understood each other deeply. The night around them softened, the light breeze brushing against their shoulders like a quiet friend. After some time, Myra spoke again, her voice warm but uncertain. "I'm sorry if I'm sharing too much. I didn't plan on talking this much." Cole shook his head lightly. "I don't mind. Night like this, sometimes it's easier to talk." She smiled at that, a real smile that reached her eyes a little more than before. "You're easy to talk to," she admitted softly. "That's rare." Cole felt a small flutter of surprise. He wasn't used to hearing that. Most people saw him as quiet or distant. But Mara didn't say it like a complaint. She said it like she saw something steady in him. "I'm just listening," he replied. "Sometimes that's all someone needs." "That's more than most people do," she said gently. Cole didn't know what to say to that. So instead, he looked up at the sky. The stars glittered like tiny lanterns set across the heavens. The milky glow of the galaxy stretched faintly above them, a soft smear of light. "It's peaceful out here," Mara whispered, following his gaze. "Almost unreal." "Desert nights are like that," Cole said. "Makes you feel small, but in a good way." "In a good way," she repeated thoughtfully. She pulled one knee closer and rested her chin on it, still watching the stars. "Do you ever feel like the world moves too fast? Like everyone expects you to be someone you're not ready to be?" Cole chuckled softly. "All the time." She turned to him. "Really?" "Sure," he said. "Life doesn't always ask if we're ready. Sometimes it just pushes." She looked down at her hands. "I think that's what happened to me. I kept getting pushed, and I kept saying yes to things that didn't feel right. And after a while, I couldn't recognize myself." He could see the emotion behind her calm voice, not pain exactly, but a kind of quiet tiredness, the kind that comes from trying to be strong for too long. "You're here now," Cole said softly. "Sometimes stepping away is the first step to finding yourself again." Her eyes softened. "Maybe you're right." Another gentle breeze moved through the desert, stirring the fire slightly. The flames flickered, and a few sparks drifted upward like tiny orange stars joining their silver cousins in the sky. "Do you think everyone gets a chance to start over?" Mara asked after a moment. "I think so," Cole answered. "Might not look like a fresh start at first, but it's there if you're willing to see it." Myra's lips curled into a small, hopeful smile. "A new beginning in the middle of nowhere. I guess that might be what this is." Cole watched her for a moment, seeing a mix of strength and vulnerability in her expression. She didn't seem weak. She didn't seem lost the way some people did. Instead, she seemed like someone standing at the edge of a new page in her life, unsure how to begin but brave enough to try. "You'll figure things out," he said with quiet certainty. "You've got the kind of look someone gets when they're ready to change something." She blinked, a little surprised. "What kind of look is that?" "A determined one," he said, "even if you don't feel it yet." Mara let out a soft breath. "Thank you, that means more than you know." Cole nodded and poked the fire again, lifting a few glowing embers into the air. They both watched them float, twisting gently before fading into the night. "I don't usually talk to strangers this much," Mara said after a minute, "but tonight feels different. Maybe the desert makes people honest." "Maybe it does," Cole said. "Or maybe sometimes two people meet at the right time." She met his gaze, her expression warm and thoughtful. "Maybe so." They sat close to the fire for a long time, letting the night settle around them. There was no rush, no pressure to speak or move or decide anything. The desert didn't demand anything from them. It simply held them in its quiet, endless space. Eventually, Mara hugged her knees lightly and looked into the flames. "This is the first time in a long while that I feel steady." Cole smiled gently. "Glad to hear it." She gave him a small smile back, one warmer than the others. "I didn't expect meeting someone in the desert would help me breathe again, but I guess life surprises us." "It does," Cole agreed quietly. The fire crackled softly. The stars watched silently, and somewhere far away a gentle breeze rolled across the sand. In that quiet desert night, Mara and Cole, two strangers carrying their own stories, found a moment of peace neither of them had been looking for, yet both somehow needed. And the night still had more to reveal. The night settled deeper around them, wrapping the desert in a quiet stillness that seemed almost unreal. The fire had burned down to a warm, steady glow, leaving a circle of soft orange light around Cole and Mara. The stars above were brighter than before, scattered across the sky like tiny lanterns guiding travelers through the night. For a long time, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. There was something strangely comforting about sharing silence with someone who didn't demand anything from you. Mara felt calmer than she had in months, and Cole felt more open than he had in years. The desert had a way of making honesty slip out like a breath carried on the wind. Myra hugged her arms lightly around herself, not because she was cold, but because she felt emotions stirring that she hadn't expected. She watched the flames dance and flicker, her thoughts drifting like desert sand shifting under a soft breeze. Cole glanced at her now and then, noticing the thoughtful expression on her face. There was something deep in her eyes, something that wasn't fear or sadness, but something more complicated, an emotion that didn't fit in a simple word. He didn't want to ask what she was thinking. He wanted to let her reach the point where she could say it herself. That seemed kinder. The breeze brushed past them gently, lifting a few strands of Mara's hair. She tucked them behind her ear, then turned slowly toward Cole. He felt her gaze before he saw it, a warm awareness that made him look up from the fire. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, time seemed to slow. It wasn't the kind of moment filled with tension or pressure. It was a quiet one, but deep, a moment that made Cole's heart beat just a little quicker, though he didn't show it. Mara studied him with soft eyes, as if she was searching for something she hadn't decided if she wanted to find. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was gentle but steady. "Cole," she said quietly, "can I ask you something?" He nodded, his expression calm but attentive. "Sure." She hesitated a little, looking down at her hands. Then she lifted her head again, gathering what felt like courage. "When you look at me," she began slowly, "what do you feel? I mean, do I make you uneasy or curious?" Or she trailed off, not sure how to ask the question that had been circling in her mind. Cole's heartbeat picked up, though he kept his face relaxed. "Why do you ask?" "Because—" Myra paused again, trying to find the right words. The firelight made her eyes shine, reflecting thoughts she wasn't used to sharing. "Because I can sense something in you, a mix of something, and I don't know what it is." She exhaled softly, steadying herself. "So I want to know, not because I expect anything. Just because honesty feels important tonight." Cole felt something shift inside him then. He wasn't a man who opened up easily. He wasn't someone who talked about feelings with strangers, or even with people he had known for years. But Myra wasn't a stranger anymore, not entirely. The desert, the quiet, the unexpected comfort of her presence, they had all created a small bond between them that felt real. He looked back at the fire, gathering his thoughts. Myra watched him patiently, not rushing him, not pressing him. The patience alone made something inside him ease. "I guess," he said slowly, "I feel a lot at once, and that's unusual for me." Myra tilted her head slightly. "A lot like what?" Cole ran a hand across his jaw, trying to put his emotions into words he rarely used. "You don't scare me, not in that way." He paused. "But sometimes a person comes along who makes you see things in yourself you've been avoiding. That can feel intimidating." She blinked gently. "So I intimidate you?" "Not you," Cole said softly, turning his eyes back to hers. "What I feel around you." The breeze stilled for a second, as if listening. Myra's voice was barely above a whisper. "And what do you feel?" Cole looked at her fully then. Her expression was open, hopeful but careful, curious but gentle. She wasn't demanding an answer. She was simply giving him a space to speak truthfully. "I feel drawn to you," he said finally, his voice steady. "Drawn in a way I haven't felt in a long time, maybe ever." The words hung in the air, soft but honest. Myra's breath caught a little, not sharply, not with surprise, but with something like recognition. She lowered her gaze for a moment, letting the words settle around her like warm sand. Then she lifted her eyes again, her voice quiet but clear as she spoke the question she had been holding inside. "Cowboy," she said slowly, "do you fear me or desire me?" The words carried no sharpness, no pressure, no expectation. They floated gently between them, as soft as the night breeze, as quiet as the desert air. Yet they carried meaning, a deep meaning she wasn't afraid to ask anymore. Cole felt the weight of the question, not heavy in a bad way, but deep in a thoughtful way. It wasn't a question about danger or worry or anything harmful. It was a question about truth, about emotion, about connection. And it was the kind of question only someone brave would ask. He took a slow breath, letting the firelight warm his face. He didn't look away from her, not once. "I don't fear you," he said softly. "I fear what I feel because it's strong, stronger than I expected tonight." Her lips parted gently, her heartbeat soft but present in her eyes. "And desire?" she asked quietly. Cole's voice lowered, warm with honesty. "Yes, I feel that too, not in a rushed way, not in a wild way, but in a real way." Myra looked down again, her breath shaky but soft, not from fear, not at all. It was the softness that comes when someone hears something they needed to hear but didn't expect. She played with a small pebble near her boot, rolling it with her fingertip. Her voice, when she spoke next, carried a gentle emotion that made Cole's chest tighten. "I wasn't sure," she admitted. "I could see something in your eyes, but I wasn't sure what it was, and I didn't want to guess wrong." "You didn't guess wrong," he said quietly. She offered a small, warm smile that made her face glow in the firelight. "I'm glad." The night grew even quieter around them, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. The stars shimmered gently, the fire glowed softly, and the air felt warmer between them than it had before. Cole shifted a little closer to the fire, not toward her exactly, but not away either. Mara did the same without thinking, drawn by the shared warmth. They were close enough now that their shoulders were only a handspan apart. Not touching, just near enough to feel each other's presence more clearly, Mara looked at the flames again. "You know, I didn't expect any of this tonight. I thought I was just going for a walk to clear my mind. I thought it would just be me and the desert." Cole smiled lightly. "Desert had other plans." She laughed softly, a small sound, warm and almost musical in the stillness. "I guess so." Cole watched her laugh, a faint smile on his own lips. There was something so natural about her, something that felt like sunlight after a long winter. He didn't know her whole story yet, but he could tell she carried strength. A quiet strength, the kind that comes from getting back up again and again. Mara drew a slow breath. "Can I tell you something honest?" "Anything," Cole replied without hesitation. "When I asked you that question just now, I was scared too." He blinked softly. "Why?" "Because," she said gently, "I didn't know if I was imagining the connection between us. I didn't want to ask and find out there was nothing there." Cole shook his head lightly, his voice warm. "There's something there. I felt it the moment you sat down by the fire." "Really?" she asked softly. "Really," he confirmed. "It surprised me. I'm not used to it, but it's there." Mara's smile widened in a slow, shy way. "I felt it too. But I kept telling myself it made no sense. We just met. It's late. I'm tired. You're a stranger." "Maybe a stranger," Cole said gently, "but sometimes strangers understand each other better than people we've known our whole lives." "That's true," she whispered. The fire crackled gently, sending small sparks spiraling upward. Mara watched them float, then disappear into the sky. She felt lighter now, lighter than she had in a long while. Sharing honesty, hearing honesty, it eased something inside her chest. Cole leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Mara," he said softly, "you don't have to explain anything else tonight. Not unless you want to. I don't expect anything. I just want you to feel safe here, that's all." She looked at him, really looked at him, and her expression softened into something tender. "I do feel safe," she said quietly, "more than I expected." He nodded once. "Good." She took another slow breath, then spoke a truth she hadn't realized until that moment. "You're a gentle man, Cole Hartley." He gave a soft smile. "I try. Not everyone is gentle these days," she said, "but you are, you listen, you don't judge, you don't push, it feels rare." Cole's eyes warmed at her words. "And you're brave, Mara Delaney, braver than you think. Speaking honestly like you did, that takes courage." She looked down again, smiling in a shy, grateful way. "Maybe we both surprised ourselves tonight." "Maybe we did," Cole agreed. The desert wind brushed past once more, softer this time, like a hand smoothing the earth. The firelight flickered around them, painting their faces with warmth. The night felt full, not of noise or tension, but of possibility. Mara shifted closer by an inch without thinking. Cole noticed but didn't react with surprise or confusion. He simply felt the gentle closeness like a quiet blessing. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. They didn't need to. The conversation between them had gone deeper than words. They understood each other now in a way that didn't need explanation. Eventually, Mara rested her chin lightly on her knee again. Her voice was soft but certain. "I don't know where tomorrow will take me," she said. "But tonight, I'm glad the desert brought me here." Cole looked at her with steady eyes and replied in a quiet, honest tone, "Me too, Mara, more than you know." The fire glowed. The stars shimmered. And between them, a connection, gentle, warm, real, settled into place like two puzzle pieces finally finding their match. The night still had many hours left, and the desert still held many secrets in its quiet wind. But for now, Cole and Mara sat together, sharing the warmth of the fire and the closeness of two hearts, finding something unexpected in the quiet of the desert night. And neither of them felt alone anymore. The first hints of dawn slowly stretched across the desert, painting the horizon with soft shades of pale pink and gentle gold. The stars faded one by one, like tiny lanterns quietly dimming as the world prepared to wake. The air felt cooler now, touched by the early morning breeze that carried the scent of desert flowers just beginning to open. Cole had been awake since the sky was still a deep navy blue. He wasn't sure if he had truly slept or simply rested with his eyes closed. Either way, his mind had been clear, calm, and strangely hopeful. He sat near the truck now, checking the engine again in the new morning light. Things always looked different at dawn, clearer somehow. He wiped a bit of grease from his fingers and tightened another connection, testing each piece carefully. Behind him, Mara stirred from where she had slept lightly beside the fire. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes as the golden light brushed across her face. Her hair was a little messy, but it suited the soft, peaceful look she carried. She looked around, momentarily unsure of where she was until her eyes found Cole. He turned when he sensed movement, giving her a warm morning smile. "Morning," he said gently. "Morning," she replied, her voice soft and still waking up. She stretched her arms lightly and breathed in the cool air. "I can't remember the last time I slept outside. It feels quieter than I expected." Cole nodded. "Desert nights can be peaceful, mornings even more so." She stood and walked toward him, brushing dust from her jeans. "Any luck with the truck?" "Actually," he said, closing the hood halfway, "I think I fixed the main issue. The engine looks better in daylight." Mara's expression brightened. "Really?" He gave a small nod. "We'll know in a minute." They exchanged a calm, hopeful look. For a brief second, Mara felt a gentle flutter in her chest. She didn't want the moment to end, not the peace, not the closeness, not the quiet safety of being here with him. But she also knew the world outside, the desert, was waiting for both of them. Cole climbed into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine made a familiar rumble, coughed once, then came fully alive with a steady hum. Mara clapped her hands together quietly, smiling with real relief. "You did it," she said. Cole stepped out again, wiping his hands. "Guess she just needed a little rest, same as us." Mara looked at him thoughtfully, her smile softening. "I'm glad you were here." He gave a quiet laugh. "And I'm glad you walked my way." They let that moment sit between them, simple and honest. After packing away the remaining supplies, Cole turned to Mara. "We should get you back to town, or wherever you want to go." She nodded slowly, though something in her expression looked conflicted. "Yes, I guess it's time." "Guess so," Cole said softly, but he felt it too, the quiet sadness that comes when a moment you weren't ready to let go begins to slip away. They climbed into the truck, the morning sun warming the windshield. Mara buckled her seatbelt and rested her hands in her lap, tracing circles with her fingers. Cole glanced at her before starting the engine. "You okay?" he asked gently. She nodded, giving a small smile. "Just thinking. About anything you want to say out loud?" he asked. Myra looked out the window as the desert rolled slowly past them. "Maybe, but I'm not sure how to put it into words yet." "That's all right," Cole said. "We've got time." The truck moved steadily along the quiet desert road. Birds started singing, and the sun climbed higher, shining a soft golden glow across the sand. Myra watched the scenery in silence for a while, letting her thoughts settle like dust after a long walk. Finally, she spoke. "Cole, I wasn't completely honest last night. I said I wasn't running from anything dangerous. And that's true. But I was running from someone who made me feel small, someone who didn't respect me." Cole tightened his grip on the steering wheel slightly, not with anger but with understanding. "Someone who hurt your confidence," he said gently. She looked at him with gratitude in her eyes. "Yes, that's exactly it. He never hit me or anything like that. He wasn't cruel in obvious ways, but he made me doubt myself. He questioned my choices, my dreams, my decisions. Over time, I forgot what it felt like to trust myself." Cole nodded slowly, understanding more than she realized. "Words can be heavy too. Sometimes heavier than people think." Mara sighed softly. "I stayed because I believed I could fix things. I believed people always deserved patience. But one day I looked in the mirror and realized I didn't recognize the woman looking back. She looked tired, lost." Cole kept his eyes on the road but spoke with warmth. "You were strong for leaving." "Strong," she repeated softly as if the word felt unfamiliar. "Sometimes I feel weak for giving up." "You didn't give up," Cole corrected kindly. "You chose yourself." Myra didn't speak for a long moment, letting the words wash through her. They felt like soft water running over a wound she didn't know still needed healing. "I wanted to go somewhere where I could breathe again," she said. "The desert lodge seemed far enough from everything familiar. I thought being alone would help me find my way." "And did it?" Cole asked. She looked at him, her eyes gentle. "Not as much as meeting you did." Cole felt his breath catch slightly. He forced himself to keep his tone steady, though her words warmed something deep inside him. "I'm glad if I helped, truly," she smiled. "You did more than you know." They drove for a while longer, the road stretching endlessly ahead. Mara rested her head against the window, feeling peaceful in a way she hadn't felt in years. Cole glanced at her every few minutes, admiring her strength, her softness, the quiet bravery she carried. Eventually, the small town appeared in the distance, a cluster of buildings surrounded by open land. The sight made Mara sit up straighter, her hands folded together in her lap, fingers twisting nervously. Cole noticed immediately. "You don't have to be scared," he said softly. "I'm not scared," she whispered, "just unsure." "Unsure of what?" She looked at him with deep, thoughtful eyes. "Of what happens next." Cole nodded. "That's normal." "What about you?" she asked. "What happens next for you?" He hesitated, then said honestly, "I go back home. Back to work, back to the life I know." She swallowed gently. "And that's enough for you?" His voice lowered. "It was until last night." Mara's breath hitched faintly. "Cole," he glanced at her briefly, then looked back at the road. "I'm not asking for anything. I just want to be honest. You made the night feel different, better, like something I didn't know I was missing." She looked down, her heart beating warmly but carefully. "You made me feel safe, seen, like I mattered again." "You do matter," he said, his voice steady and sincere. When they reached the small diner at the edge of town, Cole pulled into the parking lot. He parked the truck, then turned off the engine. The moment the hum stopped, the quiet around them felt louder than the night had. Myra looked at the diner door, then back at Cole. "I guess this is where we say goodbye." "Only if you want it to be," Cole said softly. She looked at him, her eyes warm but uncertain. "What do you mean?" He took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "I'm not asking you to change your plans or follow me, or make any big decisions." She listened, her heart steady but attentive. "But if you ever need help," he continued, "or company or someone to talk to, you can call me." He reached into the glove box, pulled out a small notebook, tore a page, and wrote his number neatly. He handed it to her. His hand didn't shake, but it wasn't completely still either. Mara took the paper gently, holding it like it was something important. "Thank you," she whispered. "I mean it," Cole said. "You're not alone, not anymore." Her eyes softened in a way that made the whole world seem quiet. "And you're not alone either, Cole Hartley." He smiled, small, warm, real. "Guess we both needed a reminder." She laughed softly, though her eyes glistened just slightly in the morning light. She opened the truck door, then paused before getting out. "Cole," she said gently, "last night you made me feel like I could start new. Thank you for that." "You already started," he replied. "You just needed someone to say it out loud." She stepped down from the truck, then turned back and leaned slightly against the door. "Do you think our paths might cross again?" Cole met her gaze with quiet certainty. "I think they will if we want them to." Mara smiled, warm as sunrise. "Then I hope they do." She closed the door gently and walked toward the diner entrance. Cole watched her go, feeling something soft lift in his chest, something like hope, something like warmth, something like the beginning of something he didn't want to lose. Before she stepped inside, Myra turned back for one last look. Their eyes met across the distance, holding a silent promise neither of them needed to speak aloud. Then she disappeared through the door, leaving Cole alone in the soft morning glow. He breathed in, breathed out. The desert wind brushed past him, warm and calm. And for the first time in a long while, Cole didn't feel like he was returning to the same old life. It felt like a new beginning for both of them. The town was waking slowly, bathed in the soft light of morning. The diner windows glimmered with reflections of the rising sun, and the smell of fresh coffee drifted into the street. Myra paused on the sidewalk, holding Cole's number in her hand. She felt its weight in her fingers, not heavy but meaningful. It was more than numbers on paper. It was a lifeline, a promise, and a reminder that someone out there cared. She wasn't sure how long she stood there, but the moment was quiet, and she needed it. She needed to collect herself before stepping inside, before facing the world beyond the desert. Her chest still held the warmth of last night, the kind of warmth that made her heart beat in a steady rhythm she hadn't felt in months. Cole stayed in the truck, hands resting lightly on the steering wheel. He watched her from a distance, giving her space, though it was difficult not to want to speak, to call her back, to say something more. But he also knew the importance of letting her make her own choices. Respect, he reminded himself, was sometimes the most meaningful thing you could offer. The diner door opened, and Mara stepped inside. She left the paper in her hand but didn't lose its meaning. It felt like the desert night, the fire, and the stars were all still with her. She walked slowly, taking in the scent of coffee and warm bread. The low murmur of early patrons filled the space with a comforting energy. Cole stayed in the truck a little longer, watching her through the windshield. He couldn't help but feel a mix of hope and uncertainty. Their night together had been brief in the span of life, but it had left an impression deeper than anything he had experienced in years. He thought about her quiet honesty, the way she had asked difficult questions without fear, the way she had listened and shared her own story. When he finally started the truck, he didn't feel rushed. He drove slowly, keeping the morning calm with him. The roads were quiet, the town still just waking, and the desert behind him seemed to stretch forever. The truck hummed steadily, a comforting rhythm that matched the quiet peace he felt inside. Mara sat at a small table by the window in the diner, staring down at her coffee cup. She didn't drink yet. Her mind replayed the desert, the fire, the night sky, and Cole's steady presence. She realized that the desert had given her more than just silence. It had given her someone who could understand her, someone who could see her strength and her vulnerability without judgment. Someone who made her feel safe. Her thoughts drifted back to the moment she had asked him, the question that had hung in the night air. "Do you fear me or desire me?" She had asked it quietly, without expectation, and the answer he had given had surprised her. It wasn't just desire, it was honesty, recognition, and the kind of careful emotion that made her heart trust again. She sipped her coffee slowly, letting the warmth fill her from the inside. It was comforting, yes, but it wasn't the same as the feeling of being seen. That was something the desert and Cole had given her, a gift she wasn't ready to let go of. The diner door opened again, and a bell rang softly. Myra looked up, expecting another customer, but it was the owner bringing in fresh supplies. She smiled politely and returned to her coffee. In the quiet hum of morning, she felt a new kind of determination. The desert had reminded her who she was, the fire had reminded her of warmth, and Cole had reminded her that she didn't have to face life completely alone. Outside, Cole parked near the edge of town. He walked slowly along the sidewalk, letting his eyes take in the morning. He thought about Myra and the way the night had unfolded. She had surprised him too. He hadn't expected to feel such a connection, such an immediate understanding with someone he had just met. But she had a way of seeing through the walls he had built around himself, and he had a way of offering calm in return. As he approached the diner, he stopped a few feet away, not wanting to startle her. He wanted to give her space to make her own decisions. Myra looked up and noticed him immediately. Their eyes met, and a small, unspoken smile passed between them. It was gentle, warm, and full of meaning. Neither of them needed words to understand the promise behind it. She stood and walked toward him slowly, carrying the quiet confidence she had reclaimed during the desert night. Cole didn't move. He simply watched her approach, feeling the pull of connection without needing to define it. When she reached him, they stood there for a moment, letting the morning air settle around them. "I didn't expect to see you here," Mara said softly. "I wanted to make sure you got back safely," Cole replied, his voice steady and calm. Mara held out her hand, a simple gesture, and Cole took it gently. It wasn't a touch of urgency or need, but a touch that said, "We are both here and we are both okay." "I think," Mara began, looking into his eyes, "that the desert didn't just help me escape. It helped me remember something important, that I deserve to feel safe, that I deserve to feel seen, that I can trust myself again." Cole nodded. "And that's exactly what I saw last night. You've always had that strength. The desert just reminded you of it." Her eyes softened, and she squeezed his hand lightly. "You made it easier to see. I didn't expect that either. I thought I'd just sit by the fire and think, but you made it real." Cole felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't expected. He hadn't come into this morning hoping for anything more than a safe ride and a quiet goodbye. But seeing Mara stand there, strong yet gentle, made him realize that the night had changed something in both of them. "I'm glad," he said softly, "truly." They stood there for a moment longer, letting the quiet connection hold them. The morning sun rose higher, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. The air was crisp, the world waking around them, but the desert night lingered between them still. Myra finally spoke again, her voice steady but soft. "I'm going to take this chance. I'm going to move forward, even if it's just one small step at a time. And I think I want to do it knowing there are people I can trust." Cole smiled gently. "That's all anyone can ask for, one step at a time." She nodded, feeling lighter than she had in months. She looked at him with quiet gratitude. "Thank you for last night, for listening, for letting me feel seen." "You don't need to thank me," Cole said softly. "You deserved it. And you've earned it every bit." They walked together to the edge of the parking lot, neither rushing, neither wanting to let the moment end. Myra's heart was calm, steady, and full of possibility. Cole's chest felt warm with a hope he hadn't known he needed. She stopped at the sidewalk, ready to step toward the path that would take her into town and the next chapter of her life. She turned back toward him, her eyes holding a silent question. Cole met her gaze, his own eyes full of quiet assurance. "Whatever you decide next," he said softly, "you're not alone." Myra smiled, a small, radiant curve of her lips. "And you're not alone either," she said. For a long moment they simply looked at each other. No words were needed. The desert, the fire, the night, and the quiet sunrise had all done their work. They had given them clarity, warmth, and trust. Myra took a deep breath, holding the feeling of peace inside her. Then, with a final nod, she stepped forward. Cole watched her walk toward the diner, then turned back to the open road, feeling a sense of hope that hadn't been there before. The desert had given them both something rare, a reminder that even in the most unexpected places, connection could happen, honesty could matter, and beginnings could start when you least expected them. Cole climbed back into his truck, starting the engine with calm determination. He didn't know what the future held for either of them, but he knew that the night in the desert had changed them. Myra would face the world with courage again, and he would carry the warmth of her trust in his heart. The road stretched ahead, quiet and open. Cole drove slowly at first, savoring the calm. Behind him, the desert continued to glow in the early sunlight, a witness to the moments that had unfolded there. The wind carried a gentle promise that endings were only beginnings in disguise, and that connections built on honesty and respect could last far longer than a single night. Myra stepped into the diner, carrying Cole's number and a renewed sense of purpose. She smiled at the waitress and ordered breakfast, her mind clear, her heart steady. She didn't know what the day would bring, but she felt ready. She had found safety, trust, and the knowledge that someone believed in her, and that was more than enough to begin again. Cole drove out of town slowly, the morning sun casting long shadows behind the truck. His thoughts lingered on Myra, on the fire, on the desert night that had given them both courage and clarity. He felt lighter than he had in a long time, knowing that the connection they had shared was real, honest, and lasting in its own quiet way. For both of them, life had changed in subtle but profound ways. Myra would step forward into her new life with confidence and hope, and Cole would continue his own journey knowing that someone out there understood him. And somewhere in the desert, the night still held its secrets, quiet and eternal, a reminder that even the vastest emptiness could be filled with connection, warmth, and possibility. And so, with the desert behind them and the future ahead, Myra and Cole each took their first steps into a new chapter of life, one filled with hope, courage, and the quiet understanding that sometimes the most meaningful moments come when you least expect them. The story ended not with a dramatic farewell, but with a gentle promise, between two people who had found each other in the quiet of the desert night, and who carried the memory of that night forward in their hearts, wherever life would take them next.